some, discussions with the city of how much the district is willing to adjust. One of the nice things that they are doing, as they've done this design plan, is that greenbelt, and it's not really a legal greenbelt, but it's a greenbelt area. A lot of people use it. There is already some pathways. This will all be concreted, with this road design, and it will lead up to Harriman. So it'll basically run right along the edge of district property and Saul's Ranch. Unfortunately, Whitewater Cove, the roadway will be very, very close to these individuals' backyards. There will be a public open house here at the community center, June 22nd. They will be sending out, information. I've agreed that we will send it out in MailChimp to everyone in our district we've already had one public meeting. This will be the second one, in this area. But I did let them know that we would send a MailChimp out to let everybody know that, this roadway is going to become a reality.
Is the meeting going to be here?
It's going to be here, June 22nd, from 4 to 7.
So am I looking at this map right, this is gonna be 4 lanes with a median for maybe part of it?
That's correct.
And it's gonna be right behind the Whitewater Cove?
It will be a roadway very similar to Creek Bend.
So do we have any idea yet as far as what kind of traffic pattern change we're gonna be looking at Brightwater and Wyoming Springs?
There is some information on the City of Round Rock site, and I apologize, I meant to print it out for you tonight, but it is under, you just
So,
go to,
okay.
yeah, City of Round Rock Transportation. They expect when the roadway opens, I believe, that the number is like 2,700 cars per hour. What I know, the traffic that they were expecting Creek Bend to immediately take on, it's much more than that, than what they originally planned. This is a major roadway in the city's transportation plan, city and county, and this is a city and county project.
Did you say 2,700 an hour?
And so this is going to bridge over Brushy Creek, but there will also be a way to get on the Harryman from it, is it, am I looking at this right?
I'm gonna say yes.
Four-way stop up on top.
Huh?
Four-way stop up on top.
Exactly.
On top of the bridge? Over at Harryman?
He comes up and you turn left and right from there, so.
That's one of the reasons it's a very expensive project, because there's actually 2 creek crossings for this whole extension. So, I qualify that by saying yes, because these designs can dramatically change once they start getting numbers and impact, environmental impact, et cetera. So they've been in all these studies. They are still waiting for some more, but yes, and it would be quite a project. They did ask us about our little triangle of property that's right over here on, the intersection of Wyoming and Creek Bend. I did let them know, based on prior discussions that the district has had, that the MUD is not at all willing to discuss losing that little piece of property. It's the only open space that we have in the district. We would be willing to maybe talk about, a temporary construction for them as they start this, but I didn't feel like any board member was going to be okay with, losing that piece of property.
It's still a great option for overflow parking.
Yes, and
or-
for operations, I mean, that's the
or
one thing that Hector and I've been
operations
talking about.
facility.
We're pretty full at the water tower, and that would be an excellent location to do some overflow parking, but also be able to park equipment and such. And that's really the only property we have.
What kind of foot traffic do we have between the Hayman subdivision and the Fernbluff Elementary in the morning and in the afternoon? Is there,
It's really hard to judge that because the schools have not been open
That's
and
correct.
they've been at, small capacity. It's very hard for me to judge that. Next year, will give us a better flavor. I've heard from a lot of people that live over in Saul's Ranch, and they love our mud, they love our community center, they're in our parks all the time. I had one gentleman say, I just want you to know I do cross the fence and I walk that green belt, is that okay? Sure, knock yourself out, So, it was very difficult as they were doing the construction, but it's been fairly pleasant since most of the homes now are sold.
anyone else have questions?
I
Well,
will-
in the past, this has been a hotbed of dissent for people. Do you expect that to continue? Everything has died down. This has been planned out for so long, that kind of people see it as inevitable.
I think basically twofold. We have an awful lot of people in the district that are new, they haven't lived here that long, and many of them may not be aware that this roadway is even a possibility, or that it's been on the plan as long as it has. So, yes, we do have a lot of old timers in the district that knew it was probably coming. Back when the city wanted to build Creek Bend, not everybody was on the board then. That was one of the things that the ARMA negotiated with the city, was that, Creek Bend would be an individual project, but there would be at least a 5-year period between Creek Bend opening and Wyoming Springs extension being done, because of the impact, because of the elementary school. And to answer your question, I think that's going to be one of the biggest issues that people have concerns about, is that this major intersection right here at the back of the elementary school. Based on history.
Right. Is our landscaper here, Jack? You're here. I'm sorry I didn't get to you earlier.
That's okay.
It's about your time anyway, so, yeah, let's hear from Jack.
Don't need too much of your time. The last round of pre-emergent and fertilizer has been put down, so we won't be doing anything else as far as fertilization goes until the early fall. Expect that to go down September timeframe sometime. I still need to spray some areas with post-emergent, but the weather's just been so wet that I didn't want to put it down and then immediately have it wash away. And so we're kind of waiting for the weather pattern to change a little bit before I go through and do another round of the post-emergent. The ants are being treated as they come up. Don't seem to be as bad as last time. I think combination of the broadcast ant bait that we're putting down and mound control is working pretty well. I think the freeze probably helps that a little bit, but with all the rain that we've had, we have noticed that they've started to come up. So we're treating those as we come across them. The wildflower areas are close to being done for the year, so we're going to go ahead and start mowing those at the end of this month. Have had plenty of opportunity for those to put down new seeds and everything, so we didn't have quite the show this year with the bluebonnets that we've had in the past, but I think that was definitely weather dependent on that freeze event that we had. We are slightly behind in the greenbelts just because of the weather that we've had. So we do have time allotted for half days on Mondays to get caught up in those as soon as it dries out a little bit. In the meantime, we're going to be making just a couple of passes along the sidewalks and keeping that clean. But as soon as it dries out, we're gonna get caught up in there. So I've got time scheduled for my crews to go in there and give y'all extra time. The recent severe weather that we had, all of those should be removed in the next couple of weeks. We have gone through and checked some of the green belts, not all of them. I'm hoping to get those checks completed by next week, but definitely by next meeting I'll have a report for you. The big pecan tree there at Olson Meadows split in half, and so unfortunately we lost that tree. we did lose some limbs off of the ornamental pear trees that are there, so I think it just kind of solidified, you know, for me, that we're doing the right thing by going ahead and getting those trees in the ground in preparation for eventually removing those. We're getting a lot of really good feedback, from the community as they come through and see us planting all those trees. I know there was a big to-do about the road project and removing some of those trees, but, it's definitely getting some good press from going back in and planting all those trees. We are just about done with that project. I hope to be finished with that tomorrow. May run into Thursday just a little bit, but definitely we'll be getting that finished up this week. Let's see, the bed repopulation from some of the plant material that we lost during the winter weather has been completed. Irrigation repairs for some minor problems that we found during our last irrigation check have been completed. We will start mulching next week, so we anticipate that to last for a couple of weeks, a few weeks maybe, but we're gonna go ahead and get that process started. Aeration to the next aeration for the sports fields will be completed this month. And then overall, the property's really looking good. You know, I'm really happy with the way things look right now, so getting a lot of good feedback from the community. The wet weather has been a hindrance for some of it, but it's certainly helped the grass grow, so everything's looking pretty good. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
I actually have a question.
Sure.
So, sago palms,
Yeah.
do we need to go ahead and dig them up, or we still need to
You know,
give them
I
a little
think-
more time?
I think at this point, if you have not seen your sago palms start to come out from the crown of the plant, the top of the plant, there's a chance of what I'm noticing is a lot of them are coming back from the root and starting to put some on, so you might cut that off if you want that plant to be there and you don't wanna replant it. If it hasn't come back from the top, then it's gonna take it a long time to get to its former glory, so you might pull it out. One thing I will say about sago palm, be very, very careful when you're digging those up in the yard if you have dogs. Just a micro droplet of the sap from that plant can kill a dog within minutes. So please be very careful with your pets when you're messing around with the sago palms like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else?
All right, well, thank you very much. As always, it's a pleasure, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care.
Finding another couple of trees and I'll let you know. They're just splitting, they're just,
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be in touch about that. I'm hoping to get
Okay.
that completed next week. We're gonna go through and make sure that we get all the green belts, as some of them are kinda hard to see.
They are
when
hard to
they're
see.
freshly kind of broken off like that, so, we should be able to really start to really notice what we're dealing with here this next week, so.
All right,
But I'll be
thank
in
you.
touch. Okay, thank y'all.
All right. Let's move on to agenda item 10B, general manager and operations.
okey-dokey. My report is on page 26. Jeff just went through our challenges in our parks and green belts right now. We are not done with the freeze damage. It just keeps coming to light more and more. I think the saddest thing is the huge pecan tree that we lost down in Wilson Meadows. That, I have no idea how old that tree is, but it unfortunately has to be taken out.
There's one by the,
It's there, kinda separates the two soccer fields where there's picnic tables up under them.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, one of them just literally split in half and half of it fell off. And it's so damaged that there's no way to trim it to try and save it. So obviously the tree is sick, so we're gonna take it out. Let's see. I gave you the road update with Wyoming Springs Drive. Brush Creek Road project, they are finishing up the area near Olson Meadows, basically from Great Oaks, heading towards Cedar Park that runs along Olson Meadows. I expect that they'll be done in that area. It was supposed to be this week, but I think it's probably gonna run another week or two just because of all the rain and everything. Then they will start the Harryman section from Great Oaks into Round Rock. That will cause the most road closures as they're doing that. They've come up with a pretty good system that has stoplights, to kind of help with the traffic that's there. But any HOA help that we can get to basically tell people, find an alternate route. It's gonna save you time, it's gonna save them aggravation. That would really be helpful, and I know that is a very popular road as a cut through to Cedar Park. But right now, it's pretty hairy down there. Hairy man. Olson Meadows parking lot is almost finished, they were,
Is this still closed to the general public, or?
it is, because they're still working on the parking lot, but it should be open before long, the
We
far
got some
driveway.
curbs in there and stuff.
That's right, it's the farthest, driveway that they were forming up and pouring, and that should be done, and then they'll start doing the surface and everything, cause we're getting a complete new surface there at Olson Meadows. And I'll let y'all know when it does open back up. Budget committee, I just handed out a, exemption worksheet. I'm sure we'll get into this during the, budget portion of the agenda, and accounting. This month into next month, our, billing and collection company, they are changing their credit card processing company. So we have about 175 customers that use one of our payment options to where their bill is charged to their credit card every month automatically. This changeover will affect those customers. For security reasons, tokens, which that's what they call these, the tokens with their credit card are basically assigned to our current processor. All of that will be deleted, and those 175 people will need to go back in online, put all of their credit card information and everything back in. We have a plan, to do email notifications, set up 2 email notifications to everyone that's on recurring credit card right now. And because it's 175, we can monitor that pretty closely. If we start getting close to the bill due date in July, we will reach out personally to those people and say, hey, you were on credit card, recurring credit card last month, bill due is coming, would you like me to enter the information for you? So, we have a plan, it's annoyance, it happens frequently, I know it's happened with our bills before when they change this type of piece of their, payment. So we'll be going to PACE, PACE processing.
So
think that
will they
it's
be able to
only
change
175.
their information online, and you were just gonna offer to do that for them if they hadn't done it, or?
Yeah, we can do that, or just gently remind them, you guys go on.
You need to
People
be
are
able to-
getting very, very security conscious, which is
Yeah,
a very
that's
good thing.
kinda-
That is a very good thing. So we'll encourage them to go online and do it themselves.
So when is that, I'm sorry, when is that happening? When is the changeover happening?
We'll do bill due this month, then we'll do the billing at the end of the month. Hopefully it'll be complete by the 30th. And as of July 1, all of their information will be deleted, their credit card information will be deleted. July 1st, we'll be having training here, because there'll be some changes to how we take credit card payments. So it'll pretty much be from July 1st until July 23rd is the next payment due date. So there's about a 3-week window in there that,
And you're gonna, so about that time, you're gonna send out a MailChimp to say,
actually, ABR, I3, we changed names. I3 will be sending out emails to every customer
Okay.
that's currently on a recurring credit card. And we've got 2 that we're going to send out. I think we'll just wait and see how that goes. If we need to then send out one directly from the district, then we'll do that. I don't wanna send it out district-wide because that just causes confusion to people that are not set up on recurring credit card.
that's true.
But we can probably go through even in our MailChimp system and pick out those 175 customers. I just wanted y'all to be aware of this. If y'all are on recurring credit card, you're gonna have to change it come July 1. just in case.
It's a good opportunity for anyone whose expirations have changed on their credit card, or they've got a new card issue.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what I have. Do you have any questions for me? Oh, wait, let me see, updated check register. Okay, that's all I got.
Operations and everything of note?
Just a couple of things, by now, every resident of Fernbluff should have their consumer confidence reports in their mailbox or in their hands along with the water bill. So, I can forget about that until next year, so, we're done, you know, the deadline was next month. We figured we're gonna go ahead and do it this month, that way the billing stuff can go out with next month's bill and, not, you know, throw too much at our folks, so. Thankfully, nothing is done, so I'm glad to hear that. Unfortunately, our sound system has taken a hit. The main mixer, you know, I call it having a stroke, because now only half of it's working. So we are getting some recordings, and we're getting some very, very light sound out of our system, so. Canyon room, our main room, is operational right now. In fact, you probably hear it better in the canyon room than you can, you know, in the middle room. But yeah, it just, the whole replacement process, get that thing taken care of. I mean, one vendor would get us a replacement by like the end of July. So, we kept on looking, we've got a pretty much an equal, pretty darn close to what we have now, same mother company or whatever. So we're looking probably a couple, 3 weeks before we can get it in, but, seems like no matter where you go, you're gonna have some issues with shipping, you know, just supply chain issues or whatever. It is what it is, like I said, we're gonna try to just, you know, kind of nurse it along until we do get a replacement, but we're on it. And, so we're at the mercy of delivery at this point. Just wanted the board to know that, yeah, we are having some issues with it, so. Other than that, that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me.
That problem, the sound system problem in the big room, and we had a meeting in there, and it was just like this constant pumping noise. Is that part of it?
I'm sure that's part of it, you know, that mixer, it was pretty interesting, cause I would turn up the volume in this room, and the volume in the canyon room would go up, which is just totally crazy, so we did a little electronic surgery, ran a bypass, and connected the canyon room to the middle room, and it's working in the canyon room, so.
As long as I know now that I didn't break it.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
Very good. Next item up, budget committee. Director Barnes, do you have anything?
Actually, a couple of things. First off, just a quick report on the budget. So the budget is looking very good. So on, I guess the P and L starts on page 17. You can notice on the P and L that just about every category is under budget. So we are looking very good on the budget. Second thing that I wanted to talk about, and I guess this is subsection 2, C part 2. So we talked about, I believe at the last meeting, there was on page 25, there was a resolution concerning the exemption of residents for homestead for taxation, providing findings of fact, provided for open meetings. So there's actually 2 things that I want to propose. First thing is, so in like Janie said a few minutes ago, so she gave us all a homestead exemption worksheet where she ran the numbers with current valuations, looked at several different options as far as what the homestead exemption would look at as far as increase or decrease in tax revenue. And what I would like to do is I would like to make the motion to accept the resolution for a homestead exemption, but under section 2 where it says for the tax year 2021, instead of 15,000, I would like to make it for 10,000 for this year. And we reassess next year, next April, and increase that to a possible 20,000 next April. So the motion that I have right now is to accept the homestead exemption and to set that number at 10,000 for this year.
All right, for clarification, so you're saying for section 2 and section 3 on the proposed order on page 25 to change the number, district hereby exempts from the lorem taxation by the district $10,000 the appraised value
Yes.
in both section 2 and 3?
Yes.
Well, just in 3, correct? Or are you wanting that, cause currently you have it at 15,000 for the over 65 and disabled.
Oh, I'm
Want
sorry.
to
Oh,
reduce
that's
it?
right.
I'm sorry.
So, yes, so
Section
just
2 is
for
correct.
section 3. Just section 3.
I beg your pardon, okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So, and I guess we need to,
All
we
right.
would need to discuss and vote. That
Yeah.
motion,
Okay, is there any more to the motion?
because I also would like to change section, so section 2 is the 65 and older. I would like to change the 15,000 in section 2 to 25,000 in section 2.
Alright, so in section 2, that's 25,000 for residents of homesteads of individuals who are disabled or 65 years or older. And then section 3, you have it changed to, from what's written, to 10,000,
Right.
and that's for all the remaining residential
For the
homesteads.
remaining residents, right.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Barnes, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Director Stemko. Further discussion?
I'd like to ask a question if I could. I mean, I see the worksheet here, it doesn't talk about the 25,000 number, but it does, I missed it.
Yeah, actually, it's down at the bottom.
I can't either.
I should have made this bigger,
All right.
but yeah, if they do that.
So, my question to the budget committee is, I assume you don't see that this is gonna impact operations or anything regarding, the future budget, enacting this particular, motion.
Right, right. There is actually, as far as doing the 10,000 for homesteads that are not 65 and older, we would still have an increase in tax revenue. And increasing the 15,000 for 65 and older and disabled to 25 would actually have a very minimal effect on the tax revenue or a decrease in the tax revenue. Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Jenny?
And that looks like that affects basically 301 properties in the district?
305.
305.
And that's looking out into the future, into 2021, 2022, or is that today?
If y'all pass it tonight, it will be for this year, if we get it to them by July 1st.
Thanks, it's a budget conscience, and I wanna make sure that it's not gonna affect, operations in 2022.
Yeah, and that's another reason why, because, so the 65 and older, it does affect such a small group, but it will help that small group of people immensely. And so that's the reason why I'm being very conservative with the other homestead exemption, looking at 10,000 this year, then wanna reassess next year to look and see what are the valuations gonna look like next year? Are we sitting on a 2008 bubble, real estate bubble right now, or are we still gonna have the same valuations, are they gonna go up next year? And so that's the reason why I'm being very conservative for the other one.
But it looks like your assumption is that property rates and property values are gonna go up, because tax revenue's gonna go up anyway.
I'm being hopefully optimistic with that.
is a good word, hopefully optimistic.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, that satisfied my curiosity on that.
Yeah.
Mr. President, Directors, I just want to point out, I think we may have discussed this a month or two back, but as far as the homestead exemption is concerned, the way the statute reads, once you implement one, you can only roll it back to a minimum of $3,000. So just, it's my obligation to point things like that out, so I just want to bring that to your attention.
That's if the consequences are negative, then we would have the option to do that, but that's as far as we can go. We couldn't rescind
Exactly,
it. Okay.
exactly. So once you establish one, you've got one for good,
Right.
but you can roll it back to as low as $3,000.
Because we currently have no general homestead exemption, but we do have one for disabled and over 65.
And you did say the mutually exclusive, if you get the 65 or older or the disabled, you can't get the other one, right?
No, you get both.
Oh, you can go both. Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, and I also want to point out that there are very few MUDs in the state of Texas that have homestead exemptions. We would definitely be a trailblazer on that, as far as doing that, because most MUDs don't do that. So, but with the valuation of our homes that have gone up this year, I personally think that it would be good for our residents to be able to do that and get some relief from taxes. So,
On that worksheet, on the second page, there's just some general information that I wanted to make sure you all saw. Just the top portion, that is a listing of all the taxes that one of our residents pays and the tax rate per hundred value. So like you see all of the Williamson County taxes, then the ACC, Austin Community College, the MUD, Round Rock, ISD. And then kind of in the middle of the sheet, you'll see what just recently occurred in Williamson County as they were looking at their tax revenues, increased valuations of properties in Williamson County. They just increased their 65 or older exemption from 30,000 to 90,000, and they're disabled from 20 to 75. Williamson County is also, for the first time ever, they're establishing a homestead exemption. So everybody that lives in Williamson County will be entitled to a 1.5% of assessed value or $5,000, whichever is greater. So trailblazing
Right.
county too.
But home values have increased enough that even though, with this will be, if we pass this tonight, which I anticipate we probably will, we'll be lowering the tax rate effectively by an exemption. Well, not the rate, but the impact on taxpayers, because they'll get to exempt part of it
That's right.
from the.
That's right.
So it would be a net saving basically still for the taxpayer, for the MUD. Well, it would be except for the values are increasing. So if things were to stay the same, they'd see a savings, but, so even despite our action to lessen the impact on the taxpayer because of the rising home values, the net taxes will still probably go up, at least this year.
That's right, and we haven't even gotten into the whole budget process yet. I mean, we don't know what will ultimately happen with our tax rate this year. We're capped at 3.5% from over last year, we know all of that. We budget very conservatively. This last year has been even more of an oddity. Projects that we wanted to do that were in the budget, we have not done, due to COVID, due to you can't find equipment, you can't find.
Can't find contractors, right?
That's right, can't find a generator, sorry, they're just not there. So our budget this year is very, very healthy. I think what we will look at in budget is, we know that our tax values are going to stay healthy. That's just our area with what's coming into, close proximity to us. Do we think that, home values right now are overly high? Probably so. But even in the last bubble in 2008, if y'all remember, 2008 was kind of that first year, and tax values kinda stayed the same. And then it was the years after that that adjustments started being made. We never hit a 10% adjustment in this month during that time. It was painful, it was hard to budget, not knowing what was going to happen, but we never hit 10%. So we sort of did some rough numbers the other day, looking at this, and it was like, even if, worst case scenario, we lost 10% of taxable value in this district, we would be just fine operationally. So that's kind of a comfort, moving forward. If the bottom falls out, well, don't know what to tell you there, but I don't foresee that happening.
So what can we expect for big hits in the future, you know, out to 5 years? At some point, the price of our water's gonna go up, our contract's gonna get renegotiated.
Yes, I expect that it will go up this year,
Okay,
because the city of Round Rock is doing a rate study right now. Where we'll be hit, as far as budget goes, will be obviously cost of water. Sewer, we're fairly protected because we do have a really good contract with the city of Round Rock. It's going to be things like labor cost, hard costs, gasoline, all of those things that we're already seeing increase right now. Labor is probably going to be one of the biggest driving factors. Should we have a catastrophe in the district, you know, water line falls apart or whatever, we will pay premium for pipes, connections, all of that. So the hard cost is where I see operationally we've gotta be careful, and we need to budget very wisely this year. Because what we're seeing, you know, 30, 40, as much as 50% increase over the cost from last year. You all hear about the wood, how much wood has gone up, a 2x4. It's kind of the same thing in everything that we do here as well. Manufacturers aren't making it, they don't have staff, they don't have materials, and so they're able to charge a premium.
That they do.
Yes, they do.
alright, so on the whole, what I'm hearing is, you know, the geographic circumstances of the mud and the current economic climate, yes, it'll have an effect, but not something that should impact us too negatively if we take this action tonight. This will, you know, we'll still have to live within our means, we can do that, but we can still, it's not gonna impact our services to the district in any way. We should be able to get along just fine. Okay. Any other comments or questions? All right, let's put it to the vote. All those who approve Director Barnes' motion? All right, then it passes 5-0. Very good. I think this is a good attempt to try and lower the cost for our taxpayers, give them a little bit of a break. You know, in this economic climate with home prices going up, you know, it's still gonna be, people are gonna see their taxes go up, but not as much as it would if we didn't pass this tonight, so. And since we did this tonight, it'll take effect this next tax year, so. Thank you, Kevin, for spearheading this, and thank you, Janie, for working with Kevin to get the numbers and work this all out. Appreciate that very much. Anything else on
Now,
Budget Committee?
Quick question, I don't know if this is a Zach question or a Janie question or who, but for our residents, if they already claim a homestead exemption for like school taxes or whatever, do they have to file more paperwork, or is it just going to get up on?
No, once you enter one, it'll go through all the taxing entities.
How does the one for the 65 come over? How does that work?
You can go online to Williamson County.
No, I was
Oh.
about to say, I don't know, cause I don't qualify.
That's how you
Thankfully,
do
I'm
it.
just a few years
Really
off from that,
sad,
but,
really.
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
You can go online and there's a fill-in form, and they'll ask for, you know, verification of your age, just send a copy of your driver's license, and it's pretty easy. Shows up really within a week.
When I promised to test it out.
Okay.
And it's a one-time process. Once you claim it, you've got it.
It will be across taxing entities.
Very good. Roads Committee, do we have anything else on roads to discuss?
I do not.
I saw they finally put up the poles for on O'Connor.
You're gonna jinx it.
So I think we're gonna have some light soon.
Yeah, it was supposed to be
Yeah, all right.
finished the 1st of June, I'm thinking the end of June.
They said, I don't know if you saw Terry Cook's last email, but you know what's holding them up now? The buttons for the crosswalks, they're not available.
What we were just talking about,
Weird supply chain
you
issue.
cannot
It's the
find
weirdest
certain
thing.
things.
So,
Toilets,
Goodness.
toilets for our pavilions. Go ahead, that's one of the things hard to find.
really, you know what?
Huh? No, these are commercial and they're
Stainless steel.
the stainless steel,
Oh, okay.
back ordered.
All right, next on the agenda, Parks and Recs Committee. Director Tiber, do you have anything for Parks and Rec?
I know, Jack Gardner, our, lawn and garden boss, just described, the current status of our parks. All the issues taking place and, repairs are still taking place in all the parks. And, just last week, a very large oak tree in Olson Meadows, was broken in half. And, it has not yet been corrected, but probably later this week, the dead part will be taken apart and hopefully it'll resolve the other half of the tree. We'll see, but, that's pretty much really all I have on it. We're still just working on all the parts to straighten them out.
Very good. All right. Next up, District Community Center Committee, so we're taking reservations for the center.
We are, and, we're pretty popular. People are ready to get out and party, yeah,
Only adds to the sound system stress.
yeah, yeah.
And then we've got a meeting, the Rose meeting later this month, 27th.
It'll be a come and go, it's not gonna be a formal meeting, it's like, typical, they'll have their exhibits and that type of thing, and, you can ask questions.
So there won't be like
Health
presentation, but
associates.
there'll be people you can
That's
ask
right.
questions of?
That's right, they kinda have their stations, and you kinda go along and,
Okay,
um,
very good. Deed Restriction Committee, do we have anything tonight?
We do. At our November monthly meeting, the board voted to remove the ability to fine for deed enforcement from the order establishing fines for the district. They were removed until we could craft a specific fine policy just for deed enforcement. The deed enforcement committee was tasked with this responsibility to review fine policies in the surrounding areas and create a fine policy for the board to review and vote on. Why did we need to establish a fine policy for Fernbluff neighborhood? MUDs were tasked with deed enforcement by the state legislature in neighborhoods in a district that have deed restrictions in their restrictive covenants, but builders neglected to establish HOAs to enforce them. Districts around the state were facing drops in home values across their district because of neighborhoods without the ability to enforce deed violations. Texas law gave MUDs the authority to enforce deed restrictions in neighborhoods without HOAs in their district to protect the entire district. We've reviewed many fine policies, including the 2 other communities in our district, many HOAs and MUDs near us and around Central Texas to ensure we were consistent with other fine policies. It was important for us to keep the fine policy simple and easy to understand. Our goal has always been to encourage compliance, not to be punitive. As in the rest of our fine policy, we needed to place financial costs on residents out of compliance rather than charging all taxpayers in the entire district. We understand that most of our residents are in compliance of deed restrictions and want to ensure that it is a low percentage of residents that are not in compliance. Nevertheless, we occasionally have situations where deed restrictions are violated repeatedly without being remedied. Because we are tasked with enforcement, we've had to find a better way to encourage compliance and protect all taxpayers in our district. We've created a fine policy that we believe is responsible and fair. we've provided for extenuating circumstances to be considered and made it easy for residents to discuss with our new deed enforcement company. The deed enforcement company can work with the deed enforcement committee when special circumstances need to be considered, and we can bring it to the board if there's any problems at all. Also, after listening to input from residents of the deed enforced community, we reviewed the list of what is covered under unsightly. Sorry, this is the ACC committee now. The restrictive covenants authorize the ACC committee to establish this list. Unsightly items are not limited to this list because we don't know what the future will bring, so if we understand, it needs to be flexible. The ACC committee reviewed the list and provided additional information to ensure that it's easy to understand what's considered unsightly. The committee then voted and approved the latest unsightly list, and we provided it for the board to review. We also had to ensure before we created a fine policy that we did have an unsightly list that we could work with.
And that's basically to give the company who's gonna manage this some direction as to what types of items
Right.
are considered unsightly.
It
Including
does.
but not limited to.
Correct. And so we will get that unsightly list on our website. And in the event that the board reviews the fine policy and approves it next month, we will get that on the website when it's passed. We will also send out information to all the residents in the Fernbluff neighborhood, again, if it's approved. I provided the list that we're suggesting of the policy. It is 5-pronged, and we've already talked to Sage Management. So the policy would be as follows. First notice, a door hanger with a friendly reminder to remedy the violation within 2 weeks. Second notice, we would send a mailer with a picture of the violation and a notice that if not remedied within 2 weeks, you would be subject to a $50 fine. Third notice of violation and it has not been remedied, we would assess a $50 fine. So at this point, you've had six weeks to remedy it. No, 1, 2, you've had 4. And then we're giving you another 2 weeks. So there's not a fine assessed until the 6th week. The fourth notice would be that the violation has still not been remedied within within 7 days. Another $50 would be assessed. If there's a fifth notice required, and again, we always hope that if there isn't, we would caution that there's another $50 fee and that your violation could be forwarded to legal. And at any time, we encourage residents, if there's extenuating circumstances, to contact Sage Management to discuss. We've made it as easy as possible. And if the board feels like we've exhausted every opportunity, we may need to do that. If a violation is forwarded to legal and a resident wants to appeal, the appeal process would be to call a special meeting of the board, and the entire board would review the appeal and make a decision.
So, after a fifth notice, there's a third $50 fine and a referral to legal?
We could refer it to legal after
Okay,
that.
okay.
And now we're at the 8-week mark. I
At
mean-
the minimum,
Actually,
right,
it's 7.
maybe longer, but at the
Yeah.
minimum, yeah.
So
I-
it-
again, if there's extenuating, we're not gonna be hard and firm on this, because if there's extenuating circumstances and we see good faith that someone's trying to work with us.
Sure.
We don't want to be punitive, we wanna work with our residents.
And we wanna stress that it is, like Jessica said, it is not punitive. We're not trying to, we're not trying to get you, or we're not trying to, take everybody's money for leaving their trash can out for a couple of days. We don't want the entire district to have to pay for what only a few people, the deed enforcement of only a few people.
Sure.
So, I mean, we can't emphasize enough that it's not an automatic thing. It's not gonna be something where we're trying to make sure that everybody has to pay money. We wanna work with people.
If there's extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
We feel like, again, we removed it from the first fine order, but we feel like this kind of aligns with what the district wanted to accomplish, and that was that we wanted to ensure people that were causing the district loss of tax revenue because of their actions, whether they're stealing water from us, damaging our property, whatever. We wanted the responsibility to be solved and placed on the person that was causing expenses,
Okay.
so.
And then if it's referred to legal, you mentioned something on a special meeting of the board for an appeal?
If there's
So-
an appeal, if anyone has an appeal, we don't believe that it should be up to two people to make that decision. We would request that a special meeting is called of the board, because we can only conduct our business in an open meeting, we can't meet
Right.
with people and make decisions, so.
Would it have to be at a special meeting, or could it be at a regularly scheduled meeting?
We discussed it, and we think that, first of all, we don't think this is gonna happen very often.
Agreed.
It's very rare that anything's referred to legal. Our monthly meetings are for the regular business of the board
Right.
and the district. So we felt like we didn't wanna bog down a regular meeting, and, I mean, it's the board's decision. Again, this would go on the agenda for next month, obviously we can't vote tonight, but we can certainly discuss it.
So what does the appeal process look like? You get the fifth notice, it's referred to legal, does legal send some kind of legal notice with a checkbox to send back a form for an appeal, or if you wanna appeal, send a letter within 30 days to the law firm? What does the appeal look like? Do we even need an appeal, is what I would question. I mean, if someone is not compliant by a fifth notice, they know they're not in compliance, we've talked to them, the management company's gonna talk to them, the general manager will have talked to them. Is there even really at that point a need for an appeal process?
I'm not a lawyer, so I would defer to our lawyer. We were just trying to make sure that we were being fair and balanced.
Right.
So, but I'm not a lawyer.
So, Mr. President, Directors, there's absolutely no legal requirement to allow for an appeals process. But if y'all recall from our conversations last year, the way I drafted that resolution, I built in an appeal process so people can feel like they're being heard, so they could go to the full board. And that's kind of what the motivation was for us putting that in a resolution to begin with. But, again, there's absolutely no requirement whatsoever. I mean, you're not even required to lay out these policies, but it makes sense to have people to have for people to have a roadmap,
Yeah.
so to speak. So, for what it's worth, I think that if you're going to allow an appeal process, it is not worth your taxpayers' resources to get me involved prior to that appeal. For me to draft, a cease and desist letter is an expense to your taxpayers, and for them to then come up and appeal, and maybe the board decide, we don't think that's in a violation, we don't think this is egregious enough, then that was kind of for naught.
Essentially, they could work with, the appeal would be to work with you?
Well, no, I think if they're going to appeal, if you're going to provide your property owners the opportunity to appeal, that process should run its course before y'all send it to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, so.
I agree.
So that way I'm not getting involved in something
Yeah.
that may, or may not be an issue.
No,
So-
I agree.
So my question along these lines is that, or maybe you've already answered it, is that if you go to legal, then is the district paying for this, or is the homeowner gonna end up paying for this? Because.
I mean, our goal is to get the cost of deed enforcement off the districts,
Right.
all the taxpayers, and to have it lay with the persons that are in violation.
Well, exactly,
Uh,
that's why I asked the question, is because, in Oak Brook, right, if it goes to legal, the homeowner is gonna end up paying the legal.
I understand.
It's gonna be billed to their account. And
It-
like you said, I don't think it's fair that the whole district pays the legal fees for a homeowner in Fernbluff.
In all the DCCNRs and fine policies that we've reviewed, all the cost involved with the deed violation was absorbed by the resident that was not in compliance. There was no instance where a MUD or an HOA covered the cost.
Sure. And that was basically my question, are we gonna follow that model?
Oh.
Or can we follow that model since we're on?
I can't predict how the MUD might negotiate with someone. I can't do that. I can, that's the standard, but I believe any HOA or MUD has the ability to negotiate with a resident because the goal is compliance. That's what we're looking for. But on the other hand, if there's willful neglect of compliance, we have to have a way to remedy it without costing every taxpayer in this district.
Don't disagree at all with that.
Yeah.
I wanted to hear that it wasn't the district that was gonna have to pick up those legal fees, that's my hope anyway.
So it's not that you cannot assess those legal fees to the property owner, you can, but I would just encourage the board to consider laying that out a little bit more precisely if y'all wanna adopt a policy to that effect. If the policy is you get legal involved after an opportunity for an appeal is heard, the board denies the appeal and you still don't have compliance, then legal has to draft a letter, and then maybe they come into compliance, you're still probably talking about a few $100s easy in legal fees, at least an hour, just to input on that. And so, if that's what y'all want, how y'all would like to lay out the policies, I'll help you massage that
Okay.
and lay that out as such in your policies. But, the stark reality is, most of the time, whenever I'm drafting a letter to somebody, a cease and desist for something like this, a deed restriction violation, the odds are high we're going to court. And at court, we're gonna seek seek attorney's fees anyway. We're gonna seek statutory damages that are allowed under the property code. So, I'm just explaining that so you understand that, it's all well and good to put something into the policy saying, okay, now we're gonna assess legal fees against you too because you didn't come into compliance. But the odds are high if somebody has been out of compliance after 5 notices plus 1 from legal, the odds are high we're gonna end up in court anyway. So I just kinda want to, flesh
So-
it out a little bit.
So you can we've made our recommendation, we've been able to talk about it, so now we can give this to you, and you can make sure that we're meeting the legal requirements and your suggestions,
Sure.
and then we can discuss it next month.
Yes, ma'am, and what I'd propose is that, much like you adopted the order, we'll bring this forward in a formal manner. We'll draft it into an order that we can kind of attach, I think, probably to that, well, I take that back, we stripped out the deed restriction provisions of that.
Right, the rest of the order still applies.
Yeah, so
People damage
what
property.
I'd recommend then is that we just draft a fresh order for this, and we'll incorporate the system you've got set up here, and I'll get with you, Jessica, and we can kind of decide what makes sense, what sounds good, what.
Well, our
what
committee,
ma-
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we committee, so that's
Okay,
easily done.
right.
And, so yeah, so that'd be helpful, and then, we can exchange that, the next week or so, and then we'll have this nice fleshed out, ready to go for the board, full consideration, and then we'll make sure we've got a more specific item on your agenda for next month that's specific to adopted policies as far as finding impositions.
I want to address a couple of questions that have been, asked, and that is this unfair to one community in the neighborhood because it doesn't happen to the other two communities? The other two communities have an HOA and pay monthly fees to have deed enforcement managed. So they're already paying for the deed enforcement in their community. The residents that are fined or go to legal, they manage those costs, not the association. So the neighborhood without an HOA that does have deed restrictions that have to be enforced, even though they don't have a way to enforce them, it's going to be the same. It's just that they don't have a monthly fee. That's managing their deed enforcement.
Well, the other two neighborhoods are subsidizing that deed enforcement also.
They
through
are,
taxes.
that's true, and have been as
Right.
long as deed enforcement has been performed.
And also-
So we're still gonna pay for that, just for the cost of deed enforcement. The difference is that there's now a fine that will offset some of that cost.
Some of it, right.
And this
It's-
money.
The goal is not to make that money back, it's just.
Correct,
it's
it's
just-
not.
It's
And-
to enforce, it's to get compliance, and the
Absolutely.
fact that it's monetary, it'll help defray.
This
whatever
doesn't
cost.
go in a special fund, it just goes to defer the cost. I also wanna mention that, we voted to replace our deed enforcement company, and, we had an example recently of why we think it's going to work better for our smaller neighborhood. And that is, during the recent hailstorm, many roofs were damaged. And, I saw roofer signs everywhere, that's fairly typical. And then I noticed that Connect Community Management sent out violations. And I know it's a violation, I get it.
Technically.
But if our new deed enforcement management team had been in place, they could have easily placed a door hanger, just, hey, just a friendly reminder, signs aren't allowed. We understand, we know the roofer tells you you're gonna get 10%, but we just wanted to let you know. It just felt like such overkill to do that, so we're really hoping that we can, make it a little bit friendlier and, more personal in this community.
Just a differentiator between the two HOAs, there also is the fact that not only are they paying a monthly, assessment, but, they also, every resident has an account. So if, somebody, is in violation, gets fined, it gets tagged onto their account, which is something that I don't think Fernbluff has. And it's something I guess we can't do because they
No,
don't have.
and I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanna make it clear, fines will never be attached to a water bill. That they're absolutely, we will never do that, there's no plan to do it, we don't believe that we should do it or can do it, we will not be doing that. It is the personal responsibility of the resident at that address, or the homeowner, if it's a rental.
The other question I have, I guess, you talk about the door hangers. Is that something that has already been negotiated with this company that they're gonna do? Because I know the company that Oakbrook is with, they don't allow the driver to get out of the car. He has to take pictures and everything right from the car. He cannot get out of the car. So everything's done
We
by
have a
email.
different policy. If any resident was uncomfortable with it, they could opt out and say, I prefer to get a postcard. We formerly did it in Stone Canyon, when I first lived in Stone Canyon. Most residents thought it was much friendlier, and they liked it. and, they were like, and most residents don't know they're violating a violation. A deed violation, so they were appreciative of it. It's harder to do in a larger community. I think Fernbluff is gonna be manageable. But if there's any resident that's not comfortable with it, we would certainly let them opt out and send a postcard.
Well, again, the difference is that, we've got an organization, the HOAs, we've got email addresses and tools so that, they've actually moved to just send an email. They don't even mail it until they get to the fines where it has to be certified mail.
For a violation?
For a violation, that includes a fine. We have to send a certified letter to the.
Oh, with the fine?
With the fine, if it's. and
We will be in I assure you, we will be in compliance. We haven't, we're not lawyers.
No,
We're gonna leave that.
I'm just telling
We
you
were
how
just
it
tasked with the
operates.
policy.
I'm just telling you how it operates.
Yeah.
So that you can consider that, because, I think the certified letter is $15, and that's not recoverable, right? It's hard outlay. And you can always, if somebody comes to an agreement, that you can waive the fee, the $50, fine. But even in, in our development, we can't waive the $15 fee, because then it goes against the homeowners association.
I'm having a hard time understanding you. Are you saying that with your first fee violation, or first violation, you send it certified?
Only if there's a fee involved.
Oh, I don't know any other neighborhood that does that, Zach. I mean, our neighborhood doesn't, and no other neighborhood did I see that in the fine policy. But if that's required,
It's not, but you have noticed that way, if it's sent certified, then you know that the recipient got the letter. They can't, you can't use it lost in the mail kind of excuse. In case they say, I would've paid the fine, but I never got the letter. So, I think it makes sense to have a verification mechanism, whether it's, done, personal delivery by someone from the management company or certified letter. To me, that makes sense.
I mean, and even certified, a lot of times if they look for a signature, the mailman doesn't even go to the door, they just take it back to the post office, and nobody ever collects it if they're not expecting it. And we had somebody who was, basically, we're gonna go to foreclosure. And I walked over and handed the guy his statement, and said, you gotta pay this, or when we get the lawyers involved, it's gonna cost you. And the guy had no idea, he thought he had paid up front annually, and, and he was grateful, but that's only because I decided I was gonna go, because they're few and far between, but decided I was gonna go and actually talk to the guy and try and figure out what was going on, make sure he knew that, he was gonna go to foreclosure was the next step, and, that's not what we want our neighbors to do.
I would recommend certified mail, and the second method, either hand delivery, like left in the mailbox or at the door.
but there's no signature.
Or first
No.
class mail. But if you send it certified, you'll have the signature. But if they, like Mark says, they keep it at the post office, they try to deliver, no one's there, the certified, it goes and sits at the post office, the person never picks it up. If you also do either hand delivery or first class mail, then they got a copy of it. So if, they would get 2 copies of it if they get the first class mail and they sign for it, or the hand delivery and they sign for it, the certified. But they can't use it as an excuse, like, oh, I didn't know, I didn't ever pick up the certified mail, I didn't know it was in there.
Food for thought.
Yeah, so I guess we can, again, we can't discuss with each other, but I guess we can reflect over the next month and bring our ideas back next month before we vote.
That's fine.
And I'll hit the books again, and I'm gonna I'll call some of these people again and say, how do you manage this problem? Is it a problem for you? And see if maybe they have some ideas.
Right. Okay.
But I do know that, Sage Management is willing to, discuss with residents. He's very flexible. I can't imagine that that's part of his contract, so perhaps with an additional fee, I don't know, I'm just guessing. We could ask him to deliver fine policy, or fine letters, but, I'm sure there's a way we can work it out.
I'm sure, yeah. And then, you know, if you're not wedded to the, I don't know that we need an appeals process. If we're working with someone through the notices, you know, someone's got 5 notices, or 3 notices, at, you know, 5 attempts, I'm sorry, 5 notifications, the last 3 of which are
Yeah.
fines, you know, they're gonna know, and I don't know that we need a special meeting of the board. You know, once it goes to legal, if we need to take action, whether to, you know, collect unpaid fines and, you know, get a court order on rectifying the deed restriction, I mean, I see it as a board decision. I don't know that there needs to be an appeal for that. And I don't know that we need a special meeting, although we could certainly call one if you know, circumstances warrant.
I suppose, you know, again, when we did remove the entire deed enforcement portion of,
Right.
of that fine order. So we're certainly not obligated to offer the appeal process that was offered in the other 3.
If you're not wedded to that, I mean, I don't see a reason to
I'm
do
not,
that.
I'm not, I just, I kinda was following the pattern, of the original order.
Right. I know we'll have to vote, you know, once we get to legal action, we'd have to approve it, of course, and whether we do that in a special meeting or not, I'm fine to do it in a special meeting if circumstances warrant, but as far as an appeal of the notices, I mean, if, you know, someone's on their 5th notice and they're not in compliance yet, there's an issue that, like, you know, that's the point we're gonna get legal involved anyway, and like Zach said, at that point, they're not interested in coming into compliance. It's gonna go to a lawsuit.
I assume if there were extenuating circumstances, that Sage Management would have been notified, and if for some reason something needed consideration, they could bring it
Yeah,
to
I
the
think
board.
between Sage and our general manager, I think we need to allow them to have consideration, like, oh, you were deployed for 6 months and you didn't know what was going on, you know, then obviously the general manager should be able to say, forget about the fines, you know, when can you be in compliance with this and work with the person? I mean, I think that's relatively fair, no?
And that's kind of what we've done as a committee before, when we have a special circumstance, we give extra time and we do it, so it's the same thing. I agree with
Yeah.
you.
We've done that all the time.
Yeah,
you know.
Yes.
I completely
Yes.
agree with you. Yeah.
Good, I look forward to seeing, I thank you for all your work so far. I know this is a lot of, you know, meeting and consideration and everything, and
It's a
preparing
lot.
for this meeting. I really appreciate the work,
Thank you.
Jessica and Kevin, y'all put into this.
It was important, it's important to our
Right.
community, it's important to our board, it's important to our district.
Couldn't say it better. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Security Committee, Director Tyler, do we have anything?
Yes, sir, just kind of briefly, there were 76 patrol hours in the month of May. And they range from 5 o'clock in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night. And the patrols were all routine, and they covered the entire mud property. So basically, they were standard monthly patrols, and that's all I have on it.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Tyler. Next up, Communications, Director Smith, do you have anything for us?
I just have a question in terms of the recently passed order for the homestead. Are we going to make that?
Oh, yeah, how do we
known
announce
to
that?
our-
Yeah, good
our
idea.
constituents, and if so, how and when?
Absolutely, we will. We'll have to make sure that we get everything buttoned up with Williamson County, and then we'll need to come up with language that we wanna put, how we write it, and then we can put it out on MailChimp. I would hate to put that out there and then something happens at Williamson County and it
Yeah.
doesn't go into effect.
I'll try to take care of this and get it sent over to Williamson County tomorrow. And I'll ask them to reply and let us know, and then you'll have the order, the signed everything. I'll get that tonight, and then, depending on what they say, then I guess you could decide how you wanna put it out there.
Advertise it out there. Yeah, we'll do that, and, we'll send it out in a MailChimp.
Anybody that's already filed for a homestead exemption should get this.
And we need to tell them, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I mean, until we talk about it plus even that if you apply for the 65 or older or the disabled, that will apply as well, right?
We can,
Or
yeah,
if you haven't, this is, you know, you can put it to the website at the Williamson
this is
County.
where you go to do it,
do
and this is the form you
And
can do,
just
yeah.
make sure it's clear that, you know, we've got this marvelous new break for you, and we wanna make sure you know how to
Sure,
deal with it.
that would be a
I'll take
great
advantage.
MailChimp to send out.
Yeah,
Would-
yeah.
would,
Yeah.
So, and let me know if you need any help with
I will do that,
wordsmithing.
yeah, wordsmith.
After all my name is, maybe I can help.
excellent.
That's it.
That's it, all right,
That's it.
next item on the agenda, we had a teaser from Suzanne earlier, so it's attorney's report time, is this time for you to come through on your teaser?
Not my teaser, this is the Zach show.
The big takeaway, Mr. President, Directors, is that, the legislature did, adopt and pass into law HB 1118. And so what that means for the directors is that unless you are performing 25% of your duties as a board member on a district computer and you are accessing a district database, then you no longer have to do the certification. Your employees, however, do.
Are you kidding me?
We'll have to continue doing this.
Last cyber training, guys.
So we'll still continue to remind y'all each year that we need to do that certification. The way the legislation reads, it looks like DIR is still gonna require everybody to at least certify that they have to do the training or do not, and that they've gone through, gotten their employees to do it if they do. So there's still gonna be some level of compliance on this, but by and large, directors are off the hook. SB 3.
Can I ask a question? I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
So, we sometimes, have, like the ACC committee, sometimes communicates via email. Sometimes we, get questions from residents. Is that considered mud work? I mean, I know it would take a lot to get to 25%, but do we need to be careful?
You know, there's no science, unfortunately, behind the legislation as to how you calculate, get to that 25%. The legislature didn't do us any favors there. So it is district work. Since you're a director, I mean, I'd have to, I would argue that this district work, just
Okay.
plain and simple. But again, you know, who makes that determination? The board does.
Okay.
And so, what again, we're waiting to see what the form, Department of Information Resources, we're waiting to see what that form is gonna look like that they're gonna promulgate. And hopefully there might be a little bit more instruction behind that.
Okay.
Whenever they passed this bill in 19, as Suzanne very well knows, it was like pulling teeth trying to get information from the Department of Information Resources, trying to figure out how exactly, you know, we were supposed to bring people into compliance. So all I can say for right now is stand by, but the way the statute reads, it would be up to the board to decide who's putting in 25% and who's not. The other big piece of legislation that passed was SB 3. That was the omnibus legislation that they filed and passed in response to the winter storms in February. There are provisions that relate to water utilities specifically. There's a whole bunch of provisions in there that have absolutely nothing to do with water utilities whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is next month, Ms. Clark will be here in my stead, but she'll bring forward a memorandum that we're putting together right now that details the legislation that did get passed into law that affects districts in general, and SB 3. We'll discuss that legislation in there. So, but all in all, the legislative session was pretty quiet. You know, the pandemic obviously slowed their work down pretty dramatically, and then again when the winter storm came in February, that really you know, they shifted their focus to those matters for a good chunk of the legislative session. So your legislative update will be a lot easier to process this year than it was in 2019, but we'll get you one nonetheless. That's all I have, Mr. President.
That's it, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next item on the agenda, next meeting day, July 13th, is that, anyone gonna miss it?
I will miss it.
You will miss it unless we move it? Everything else is good? Okay, so, okay, so, all right, sorry.
So, you know, my daughter comes first.
Understood,
After me.
understood. Future agenda items, so we should have from the deed restriction committee both the five-prong process spelled out and, items considered unsightly, so that's two different
Well, we
things.
don't have to vote on those because that's the responsibility of the ACC committee.
You want the board to ratify it?
We.
So it's not necessary, I guess. is-
It's not necessary, but I certainly think you could say something that, says you support it, this decision of the committee, I don't know, ask Jack.
I'm happy to ratify it.
Okay.
To,
Just-
at least recognize it as
Yeah.
what we believe, how we
Sure.
interpret unsightly as.
Yeah, then, I think that supports our committee and
Okay.
that we're, yeah, sure.
I think so too, and that helps us be clear with what the ACC and the board considers unsightly and what we, need to come into compliance so that, things are not unsightly, at least on items that are in contention. It's not an exhaustive list, it's,
No,
including but not limited to kind of
Mhm.
list, but, okay.
okay.
I think another thing that we might put on, and because, we need to meet for the budget committee
Yes.
to actually take a look at the 21-22 budget. So,
Right.
do we wanna put the budget on as an agenda item?
So do we wanna do a workshop like we've done in past years, or Kevin, I need to take a stab at it with you first before we do that?
I think we need to take a stab first,
Okay.
and then, it has to be approved. We have to have a draft in August.
It just has to be finally approved in, by the end of September.
Yeah,
Um,
so we have plenty of time, so,
So we can maybe save that for the August meeting?
I think that's what we've done in the past, but yes.
Yeah.
And that gives us time to do a workshop also.
And then we can do the tax, workshop in September.
We could give y'all a draft, probably a draft budget, come July, if you guys are gonna be in town. And then the board has a month to look at it, and we can, revisit it in August, make whatever changes.
Cause in August is when you'll have your tax rate, and I'll have to publish that, and then you'll approve your
So
order
we'll
in
know
September.
that before that, that's right, so, yeah, it always happens July, August.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So you do want something about the draft budget on the July
I think
agenda?
so.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So we've got the five-prong process, we've got the unsightly items, and we've got budget, okay, for sure.
Motion to adjourn.
I have motion to adjourn from Director Timer, second by Director Barnes, all in favor.
Aye.
Motion carries, at 7:31, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.